There we go. And I think is a good way to start for people who may have missed our new newsletter or any of our announcements. We're just going to start to set the scene a little bit with our brand new campaign video for those that haven't seen it, or for those that have seen it, hopefully to familiarize yourself with the moment we're in and what we're doing this evening. So if this tech works, do wave at me if you can't hear the audio, but it should work.
When I say national security, what do you think of? But what if I said our national security was at risk from an enemy many don't realise is threatening our safety in the UK? The collapse of the natural world is now a direct threat to the UK's national security. And this isn't a fringe opinion. A suppressed government report recently warned that our food system is at increasing risk of catastrophic failure in the coming decades. And this would mean much higher prices, food shortages, and could even push the most orderly societies to break down. By failing to protect the natural world, we are putting everything we care about at risk. Because nature underpins everything. Our ability to grow food, our health, and our economy. It is critical national infrastructure, as essential as our roads, energy, or water. The new Nature and National Security Bill is an urgent, science-led response to this threat. Not only will it help protect us, it will help build a more resilient future. A future not at the mercy of vested interests and foreign dictators, or wrecked by the impacts of extreme weather. A future where ecosystems are strengthened, connected, and maintained to secure affordable food, safer homes, and better health for communities across the UK. The time for this legislation is now. Please ask your MP to support the Nature and National Security Bill.
So hopefully for people that just seen that for the first time, find it inspiring and gives you a little bit of an insight of what we're going to be discussing this evening. For those that have already seen it, hopefully it's a reminder of why we're all here and the action that we have a chance to take. And as I said previously, we're really delighted to be joined by Professor Paul Behrens, who's just going to be going into setting the scene, basically where we're at and why we're talking about nature as a national security concern. But I'll pass over to Paul, who will be able to say it far more articulately than I will.
Well, thank you. I know, I'm sure. I mean, you've seen me already, but here we go. I'm just going to share a PowerPoint here. Hopefully, you can see this. And let's go from here. Hopefully, you can see that okay. Great. Great. Yeah. So, I mean, we, as I said in the video there, we are facing a sort of a catastrophe on our hands if we don't get to grips with nature loss and climate change. And nature and climate do go together in this. We can see this because we've got emerging evidence that's happening from across the industry, from science, from policy, all telling us that the ecosystems that we rely on, both domestically and internationally, are a tremendous threat and can affect our food security in the shorter term, but also in the longer term, the livability of the planet, of course. I'm going to give a few examples in these slides, and then talk a little bit about how we've underestimated change over time, and then talk about what we can do about it. So I think this last year really highlighted to me that it wasn't just scientists being very worried about the state of the food system, about the state of nature. This was a anonymous report, anonymous memo that was released by several CEO, sort of C-suite people in food companies in the UK. And they said, we are reaching a moment of threat to food security like none other we've seen. Yield, quality, and predictability of supply from many of our critical sourcing regions is not something we'll be able to rely on over the coming years. The data on degrading soil health, water scarcity, global heating, and extreme weather, it goes on to talk about ecosystem breakdown as well. Back up what we're seeing from within the system, an interconnected set of crises. More recently, we've seen the release of two different reports I say release advisedly because although many of you will have probably seen the Joint Intelligence Committee report on ecosystem collapse, this was MI5, MI6, MOD, this was the FCDO. So it was very much sort of the national security infrastructure that writes reports for the government, finding that we are at increasing threat of ecosystem collapse, and this is a imminent threat for national security in the UK. Now, just maybe a little bit of background on this, which is potentially quite interesting, and one of the reasons why this campaign is so important, was that it was meant to come out, and as I understand it, the sort of intelligence community were actually quite excited for this to come out. They were really looking forward to it. They thought this is a really good report. I mean, looking forward to bad news, as you can imagine, but like looking forward to to actually getting this out there, and so people could really start to address the issues. At the last minute, the government said we can't have this coming out, and that led to a sort of interim period where people were like, "Well, when is this going to come out?" Now, finally, it was released in a sort of reduced format of several pages, I think about 12 pages, earlier this year. Then the ITV subsequently saw a fuller report, but that was still redacted. So as yet, we still don't have this full report. I mean, that's really important to state. This is about ecosystem collapse. This is about the loss of nature worldwide and domestically, and we have not got this full report, which is shocking to me. And obviously infuriating, but obviously gives a lot of push and anger. That can be quite a motivator for them to release it. A second report that came out recently was a DEFRA report. Now, again, we don't have the full report for this. This was a foresight team within DEFRA so that's Environment and Food, Rural Affairs. And they were, again, looking at this catastrophic failure possibilities. Now, this was very much a foresight. So it's, they said it could happen as early as 2030. I think that's unlikely myself. It could absolutely happen. I think it's a small possibility, but who knows? I'm going to talk about possibilities in a minute when it comes to climate change, where we have a little bit of a better handle on how far we're underestimating things. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think we're underestimating things in nature as well. But it's much harder scientifically to put a finger on how and by how much. But in any case, this DEFRA report again, came out, was seen by the Times. As I understand it, was the Times reporter saw it on a screen, and it wasn't again released. Now, there was a really interesting Guardian podcast the other day with Fiona Harvey about the ecosystem collapse report, the JRC report. And that's well worth a listen for those of you who are really, really interested, because it was a fascinating insight into how these things sort of happen and, how awful actually it was that it wasn't released. Okay, I spoke about this underestimation over time. Now, we do have a biodiversity and nature version of the IPCC, which is for climate change. But the IPCC has this very nice plots that we can see how we've underestimated impacts over time. And to a large extent, I think this is very much true in biodiversity and nature loss. What we can see here is we can see on the left, the impacts to the economy and to ecology, and on the right, the tipping points, so that's the large-scale discontinuities. And what we can see is the estimated risk at different temperatures over time. And what I'm really showing here is that through the years, hopefully you can see my little cursor here, you can see I've plotted the IPCC reports from 2001 up to 2020. So these are the four different reports. And what we can see is that the estimates for the same amount of risk has come down at a lower temperature over time. And you can see how what we thought would happen at above 3 degrees is now slated to happen below 2. And what we thought would happen above 5 degrees is slated to happen below 2. And to a large extent, we've made these underestimates both at the national level and at the international level, and also at the national level. So this is a really important report, the UK Climate Change Risk Assessment that came out in 2020. It said better representation of the landscape and urban areas in the kilometre scale model have highlighted there is a very small chance, less than 0.02%, of exceeding 40 degrees by 2040. And then, of course, we did it a year later. And so there's this scientific underestimation over time because these systems are so complex. So the way I think this looks going forwards, in terms of if we don't sort this out, if we don't recover nature in the country, if we don't encourage nature connectedness across the country, if we don't bring back diversity in ecosystems across the country, and if we continue to drag our feet on climate action, we will see cost of living increase as the time goes on. And we already know that the loss of biodiversity, poor soil health, poor water availability is already impacting our agriculture and our food availability. And what we can expect is that the cost of living will increase. Now, how I see it, what's on the line here is actually the stability of society itself. So in the blue here, I've sort of just done a sort of schematic, right, where, cost of living varies from year to year. Some years it goes up, some years it goes down. But typically, before the onset of large-scale ecosystem loss and climate change, you'd expect it to sort of vary around a certain amount. Then, as climate and nature impacts accumulate, you get this cost of living ramping up. And to some extent, we've already seen this. Um, and we can see we've got two options ahead of us. We can adapt, we can mitigate, we can bring nature back, um, or we can continue on the current policies as we go. And as we start to increase these cost of living, we reach thresholds in society where we start to see strikes, food riots, and political instability. And we've seen this in times gone by. For some of you who've seen the national emergency briefing, you'd have seen this already. But this is a very worrying picture, and I do want to highlight on the opportunities here because I think this bill and the provisions within it can go a long way to harnessing a lot of the benefits that I'm going to talk about here. Um, I often focus in my work on the reason why we need to shift to plant-rich diets. And this is to bring back nature. And I just wanted to sort of include this so it gives you a little bit of hope rather than sort of this doom and gloom that we're going to head towards catastrophe no matter what we do. And if we do move to plant-rich diets, we reduce emissions, we provide carbon storage, we meet climate targets, we meet nature targets, we have flood resilience, and this is very much related to the nature targets that would be in the bill. Improved mental health, I'll talk about that in a minute. Forestry offer lots of other opportunities for climate-based and nature-based solutions. Cleaner water, cleaner air, healthier diets, improved productivity, saving the NHS money, food security, improving food security, increasing agricultural income, and a rural renaissance. And I think, that's what we're really looking at when we see the Nature and National Security Bill, is it's increasing that rural resilience, it's increasing agricultural resilience, it's increasing mental health outcomes across the country with access to green space, so many spillover benefits. And the question is like if there are so many benefits to these changes, why aren't they happening? And to a large extent, it's the same old story. We've seen big tobacco, we've seen big oil, we've seen big dairy, meat and dairy. And in the same case, it's always pushing to discredit the science, disseminate false information, spread confusion, and promote doubt. And there's things like economic fear-mongering, like we can't recover nature because we need it for housing. Well, that's not a tension that we need to face if we were to face this properly. Scientific interference, so we see that a lot in both food systems, for example, in resistance to agroecological approaches, but also dietary transitions. False and limited solutions, green or health washing, and denial, distraction, and delay. And one of the things that I wanted to really sort of bring up today was how we actually underestimate one another all the time, and often with quite drastic consequences. So one of the sorry, there was a connection here. So One of the reasons why companies, especially sort of very large vested interests, pay a lot of money is to convince us that we don't care as much as we do. And there's this thing called pluralistic ignorance. It's a very scientific term, but basically it just means that we underestimate our neighbors. And what this means is that the concern or the willingness to act is often much higher than we think it would be. So here I've got a number of different environmental policies along the x-axis, along here, and then we've got the different averages for how much people think there is support across these different environmental actions. Now, this is what people thought was the support. And the actual levels are up here for the support for each of these actions. And this is in the US, but now this has been replicated across the world, and you can see a similar outcome, that we are underestimating one another all the time. Now, an interesting thing about this is that MPs are underestimating the public by quite a large amount on different environmental and nature action points. So what we know is that every letter that you send to an MP corrects that misunderstanding. Because although they might every now and then hear a survey that lots of people are really concerned, we know that MPs just respond to, they honestly just sort of respond to letters and media feedback. So if we really want to correct this misunderstanding, and then actually improve the willingness to act, then we need to correct their understanding of this by getting in touch and telling them. Because what they're doing at the moment is listening to, let's be honest, a lot of the misinformation and vested interests who are lobbying in Parliament, but also the media, which doesn't reflect public surveys and doesn't seek to correct misunderstandings when they are there. And this is why, our activity, our actions really matter because although it shouldn't be all on the individual, individuals make up the system. And it's a very complicated interaction between individuals and the system, but we've got to be pushing as much as possible. And we know, for example, we had the Climate Assembly in the UK. We know that when people are asked about these environmental issues, that they're often far, far beyond where the politicians are thinking about acting. So when people actually have the time to sit down, consider, talk to one another, talk to experts, they'll take on far more drastic action than politicians are discussing. And so when we look at the Nature and National Security Bill, what we're really looking at are sort of these five sort of main pillars. So a strategic nature network, and this is really important because biodiversity and nature really, for it to thrive, needs to be contiguous. It needs to be connected. Whenever you get fracturing of different systems, you start to get these ecosystem decline, these sort of vicious spirals where populations shrink and shrink and shrink and vanish away. And so a strategic nature network across the UK means that you've got an integrated system, that you've got different ecosystems across the UK that are able to transfer wildlife and nature is able to transfer across those different systems. And what's really important about that is that we're moving into a very dynamic world for nature. It may be the case that what we think of as the UK nature, the UK natural habitats, will no longer exist in the future because of climate change. So actually, we have to give nature the opportunity to move and across the country through these sorts of networks. And this is really important because when we think about what often nature, people think about restoring something to some transformed ideal. That's not going to shake out anymore. It just won't because we've just changed so much about both the land, but also the climate and nature itself. Number two, nature as infrastructure, as was saying in the film there. This is national security infrastructure. People think about pipelines and electric sort of lines, or they think about roads and transport. Nature should be every bit as high up on the agenda in terms of infrastructure as these other sort of physical, material, sort of human-made systems. National nature jobs strategy. The thing is with a lot of environmental action, you've got huge job opportunities. I mean, there's a reason why people actually give up quite well-paid jobs to go and work actually as well in nature. I mean, people just need to be set free to work with nature, to be involved in nature recovery. Align and deliver the UK's laws, existing laws, plans and targets. So, the UK has got a number of different laws and plans, and these are spread across multiple different ministries. Often they don't necessarily speak to one another very well. So we've got plans, we've got national land use frameworks. And, to be honest, there are some differences in interpretation across them. So we need to align these. And then finally, this resilience and adaptation commissioner. Now, I think this is again getting at this problem where it's multiple different ministries and often siloed approaches across different domains where we're really going to need to have to join up these issues because when you think about the benefits of of more nature in the UK. You're thinking access to green space, better mental health, better physical health, improved climate resilience, more pollinators, agriculture, cleaner water, cleaner air, lower cost for the NHS, etc., etc., etc. And when you look at that's just that list alone, you're thinking, all right, well, that's about four or five different departments or ministries just there. And so having a commissioner that can actually sort of look across the scope of different policies and different policy making is really important. I hope I haven't gone on too long there. I feel like I might have done a little bit, but I'll leave it there. I don't know whether you have time for questions or anything, Alan, or you want to move on.
No, thank you so much. No, didn't go over in time. Perfect, perfect on time. And thank you so much. It was really great to see that in such detail. And thanks again for all of your work, particularly on the People's Emergency Briefing. I know lots of people have responded very well to that, which is great. So we are going to have a Q&A. So if you do have questions, do pop them in the chat. But what we're now going to do is we're just going to pass on to our co-directors, Amy and James, who are going to be discussing some of the nature and national security bill that was just introduced there by Paul. So I'm going to share my slides again and we'll go from there. Let's just see if that works. Can you see that now? Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
great. Thanks, Alan. Yep, actually, perfect. You can start there. That's exactly where I want you to start. So that's ideal. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. We're really excited to have you here. We've been thinking a lot behind the scenes about how to pull all of this together and how to respond to the situation that we find ourselves in. And we're very excited today to tell you about an opportunity that we have to act. We think that the moment now is to really push forward on everything that Paul has just been talking about. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Do keep sharing them, and we're really happy to answer them at the end. But as Paul has said, we've had the Joint Intelligence Committee report that came out, the DEFRA report from 2040, talking about food insecurity. I know lots of you as well have been working away, making sure that there are screenings of the National Emergency Briefing, the PEB, across constituencies in the UK. So never has there been, more knowledge about the national security impact of climate change and of nature loss than there has been now. We've also just entered, yesterday was the King's speech. So this means that the next session of Parliament has just started. So we're really all keyed up to create a really big moment. And never has the government needed more good news than it has at the moment. And never have they needed a solution to all of this stuff and the threat to national security that we're facing. So we have this big opportunity. We need to act really fast. So really pleased that you're all here. We have 1 week to act, and Jamie is going to go into this in more detail later. But we have 1 week to act to make sure that all of our MPs know about this nature and national security bill. In a week's time, we're going to have a private members' bill ballot where MPs will be selected. The top MPs drawn will get to propose a piece of legislation. We need to make sure they all know about this bill and that they're all primed and ready to take it forward. So we think we can get the right person to take this bill forward, to take this piece of legislation forward. There's so much chaos in Westminster. I'm sure we're all consumed by what's going to be happening. But we can't wait for this chaos to end. This chaos won't stop. We need to get ready and act now. MPs that we've been working closest with are super supportive of this bill. They're all ready to go. They're ready to contact people that get selected at the top of the ballot. We've been working with NGO partners on this, which James is going to share shortly. We've got an incredible backing from scientists. We've been working with scientists to develop out this bill concept, this sort of mycelium of scientist network that we have in the background, of which Paul is one, which is fantastic. We've got lots of contacts now right across Westminster that we've been building up over the last few months as well, which is really fantastic. So we really think that now is the moment, and we really hope that you're going to come on this journey with us. Yeah, James, over to you.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you so much to everyone who's come along tonight. This is a huge moment, we feel. We're going to just set the context a bit more about the campaign that this sits within. So many of you here obviously come via many different avenues. Some of you are 0-hour campaigners who've stayed with us since the start. Some of you have come through perhaps from the People's Emergency Briefing film screenings that are happening across the nation right now. And it's wonderful to have you all here. But based on that film that's happening in communities, based on what Amy and Paul have just told you, we know this is now a really critical reframing of what climate and nature breakdown basically means for us as a society. You know, it's a very, very real national security threat. And that's why we're taking the lead and announcing this brand new campaign, Secure Your Future. We want to make sure that we feel that we've got the agency, the ownership in our own hands to still be able to steer the ship and make sure that we do have a bright, green and fair and equitable future for everyone. So the campaign itself for Secure Your Future basically revolves around three key objectives, I should say. We're going to be calling on the government to restore nature. We're going to be calling on the government to protect communities, and we're going to be calling on the government to end oil and gas. Now, much of what we've been campaigning for, actually, for a long time, actually through the CAN bill, you'll see now through the Secure Your Future campaign as well, a bit like a stick of Blackpool rock. So many of the things that we've been campaigning for are still present, but we are going to be using different campaigning tools, not necessarily always private members' bills, to achieve those things. But let me talk to you now about nature and why it's so critical to every aspect of our lives, because that really is what the first objective is about, restoring nature. Well, let me remind you why it is so important to our lives right now. Well, it's key for food security. I know we all know this, but actually increasingly in the times we live in, food is just something that we pick up off a supermarket shelf and don't actually associate at all with the natural ecosystems that have helped produce that and give it to us to help sustain us. You know, we need really healthy soils to grow that nutritious food. We need clean water that's going to sustain the agriculture that will help produce that food. We need pollinators that support crops. All of these different wonderful things are all part of a very, very complex system. But without nature in place and a healthy nature and an interconnected nature, then actually food just simply doesn't happen, and we'll all have empty dinner plates, very, very shortly. So that's key. It's really crucial for tackling climate change. And when I say that now, of course, we're really talking these days about mitigation and adaptation. If you think about it in terms of adaptation, in terms of mitigation, we need those healthy ecosystems again to make sure that we're drawing down those carbon emissions from the atmosphere, locking them up into carbon sinks, and making sure that actually we don't ever degrade nature, because otherwise those carbon emissions are going to go back up into the atmosphere and obviously help heat up this planet too. But also on adaptation, for example, trees are crucial now to obviously make sure we're protected from extreme heat, whether that's in schools down the road, in our hospitals where we're caring for the sick, even in our own homes. We don't want to make sure that those, homes are getting even hotter as well. So it's really, really crucial for that. Flood alleviation as well. We're seeing this rife now, particularly in the last 2 years in the UK, so the wettest years we've ever had on record. Healthy ecosystems, they're a bit like sponges. When you get into your bath and you get your sponge and it kind of soaks everything up. You need to make sure your sort of roots go deep. Those systems like actually soak up that water. We want to make sure that you've got trees and hedgerows and woods in place to sort of make sure that the impact of flash floods is actually sort of dispersed, so you don't get that sort of immediate ground force from heavy rainfall. And we need to make sure that obviously, therefore, they'll help that water evaporate back up into the atmosphere as well. All of these things will help so that you don't get that catastrophic runoff, that is caused when the water isn't soaked into the ground. It's key to health. I mean, I'm sure you'll have all read papers about this, but actually, nature's got a big role now in making us have a healthier and far more prosperous Britain. In fact, ONS data is already showing us that apparently outdoor recreation alone, that is giving us £6 to £8 billion of health benefits. 6 to 8 billion of health benefits. Is it any wonder that nature prescribing from GPs is now really taking off? It's also key for our economy. You don't have a business on a dead planet, as we all know. Research from the University of Oxford saying that the breakdown of nature could cause a 12% loss to GDP in the coming years. That's going to hugely, hugely devastate the economy if that continues to happen at that rate. It's also key for job creation, and actually Amy's going to touch on this very shortly as well. So you've got all these things that basically means that nature is this underpinning principle and asset, a precious asset, which we absolutely rely on. So what about preparing for what's ahead? Well, a good society does do that, right? But unfortunately, the moment we're living in right now, the UK is dangerously way off and underprepared for what lies ahead. There's no point in preparing for a best case scenario. Those are not the measures that planners take. We need to make sure that we're protecting communities across the UK from what they're already starting to experience. 5 years ago, this wasn't happening as much, but now we're starting to see the impacts of climate and nature breakdown right here in our communities in the UK. So we need to get ready for what's around the corner. Now, obviously, Paul and Amy have just told you about those government reports that they tried to bury. What's worse, in addition to that, is the fact that the JNCC in March also published a progress report that basically showed how the UK is progressing against the 23 targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework. This is our commitment, our international pledge that the UK is meant to be doing. We're on track for just 3 of those 23. 3. So that means that whilst the government's saying this is a national security threat, they're also saying we're desperately behind and way off track. This is a huge problem. You've also got at the same time the government's chief scientific advisor and also ongoing warnings from the Climate Change Committee that say that not a single outcome on adaptation is currently measured as good. So in other words, we're way off track. And adaptation doesn't seem to be a priority for this government at all. So even if we ended oil and gas tomorrow, that means no more oil and gas at all. There will still be a period, of course, where temperatures begin to rise, because the effects so far have been baked in. We are going to see those rises and those consequential impacts. So that means, therefore, even regardless of any drastic mitigation measures now put in place, actually we are going to see the effects, and they are going to worsen. So with that exacerbation, we need to think, well, what is the kind of answers that we can now look to? And I think that's where the Nature and National Security Bill comes in. Okay, this is something that we are so incredibly excited about. It's a new proposed law that will deliver national resilience by viewing nature as critical infrastructure and implementing a new concept, which Paul alluded to at the start, a strategic nature network, which is kind of like a powered up national nature network, which alongside smarter decisions taken for our future would mean healthy, affordable food. It'll mean homes and hospitals not being flooded or suffering extreme heat. It'll mean better physical and mental health and a whole host of other benefits for us, for people like you and me. So this is about more than responding to threats. I know we've started in quite a sort of almost doom-mongering kind of way, but actually this isn't just about the threats. This is about building for a future that Britain could be proud of and that it will benefit us all as a society, which I don't know about you, but I get excited about that. So as Amy said, the bill's been written with scientists. It's been written in collaboration with some of their experts, and also an organisation called Wildlife and Countryside Link that represent over 90 nature organisations in the UK. It's also been backed by the National Trust and the Wildlife Trust and other organisations, so we're hugely grateful for that. And the reason they're getting behind it is because they know this makes sense. This is what we need right now, and it's going to meet the moment that we're in. And if the government's prepared to listen, which they should do, this will be a triple win for people, for society, for nature, and of course for government. That's four, not triple. So anyway, on that note, I'm going to let Amy tell you a bit more about some of the details and the key sort of exciting provisions within the Nature and National Security Bill.
Brilliant, thanks, James. So the first big thing in the Nature and National Security Bill is this idea of having a strategic nature network. So ecosystems, they have to be connected to function well. That's really critical. We have committed internationally to achieve 30 by 30. So that's protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030. So we don't have long to do so. And at the moment, we're falling far, far short of that 30%. Obviously, some really amazing, brilliant work is going on to restore habitats and nature. But what we need now is somebody was saying to me the other day, having this idea of a master plan. We need a master plan to connect everything together, to have a really coordinated approach so that we can underpin the UK's security. I was speaking to someone from National Highways who was talking about how do we make sure that other infrastructure projects, their spend for biodiversity, it's all coordinated, that the government is prioritising this, and that we've got the best minds working on connecting nature. And this is all about charging up. If you think about boosting and charging up our soils, our water, our trees, our woodlands, our seas, to be able to serve us in the way that we need, and us not just serving us, that sounds very, very negative, but you know what I mean. Basically, nature, when functioning well, plays a really critical role in flood management, water storage, climate regulation, purifying water, growing food, as well as strengthening our physical and mental health. Brilliant. You're on it, Alan, with the slides. The second important point is that this nature network would be categorized as infrastructure. So this isn't a new idea. This is an idea that lots of people are speaking about, that's bubbling away in the background. And actually, in places like the Netherlands, they've gone really far in promoting and delivering nature as infrastructure. But this would be the first time that it's been put into legislation, which is very exciting for multiple reasons. One is to recognise this nature network as we do roads, think about roads, our energy system, our water system, and making sure that this network is working in conjunction with these other systems, making sure that nature is being connected, managed, and maintained. If nature is placed as infrastructure, it means it's something that's of national importance for the government. So at the moment, it gets hidden away in DEFRA, but this means that centrally government would be paying a lot more attention. If you think about the amount of money that HS2 is given, for example, that gives you some idea of how this would be prioritised and pushed forward. Nature as infrastructure would mean that decision making is streamlined at a national level, everything would be sped up, coordinated delivery would be strengthened. And also it would help unlock long-term investment for restoring nature as well. So, yes, having a national nature job strategy. Many of you might have seen the clean energy strategy that Ed Miliband put out. So this is a really compelling case for why we need to transform our energy system and the types of jobs that it would unlock and create. And we believe that we can say that we can create the same amount of jobs in a national nature job strategy. These would be good future-proof jobs. Many of these jobs would be resilient from automation, which is really key as we move forwards. And it's quite exciting because we've seen that the green jobs market has grown by 27.8% since 2015. It's showing really strong resilience as well. So these are all really good arguments that we can take to the government for carrying out this plan. A nature network would require a really wide range of different occupations, skill levels. It would mean jobs would be created right across the UK as well to achieve this master plan. So that's ecologists, conservationists, but also project planners, engineers, data analysts, and much, much more. So the next slide, thank you. The final part of the bill that I'll talk about today is this idea of having a resilience and adaptation commissioner. So for this section of the bill, we've really drawn on the Future Generations Commissioner in Wales, the Children's Commissioner in England. It would provide a really public voice around adaptation to make sure that communities are being protected to the level that they should be. A commissioner would also make sure that the government is being held to account and ensure that decisions rise across government. So all these different government departments are being made with the changing climate and impacts of nature loss in mind. Because if we don't have clear direction, decisions are being taken, projects are being built that in the future you'll have railways buckling, homes that will flood, hospital computer systems that will break in the heat, and essentially that's a lot of wasted resources as well. So we need to really understand the perimeters in which we need to act and make sure that this is understood right across government. And I'll pass back to James.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I mean, the title of this slide kind of says it all, really. We need to get on with the job, in my mind. This is a bill about delivery. Targets, as we've found ourselves, can too often be missed, and we are running out of time. We actually need to get on with things and take action now. This bill is really about real ideas that the government, in theory, tomorrow could start to implement almost immediately, which can help us make the progress that we so desperately need. I mean, communities are already feeling the impacts. People are suffering. Nature is degrading. Our national security is at threat. However, it doesn't have to be this way. If we can make this nature and national security bill law, then we'll go a long way to securing our futures. And I don't know about you, but that makes me pretty excited and pretty keen to lean into this. I think you're on mute, Sam.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And it is such a huge opportunity. I've seen there's questions in the chat that we are going to get to, so don't worry, we have captured them all. But in this moment about this delivery that James spoke about, we're now going to pass on to Jamie, who's our grassroots manager, who's going to briefly cover how you can help advance this opportunity. So I'll pass on to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Amy, James, and Paul for taking us through the Nature and National Security Bill and why it matters. Now, I know lots of you on this call will have been either hosting or attending screenings of the People's Emergency Briefing in your constituencies recently. Some of you may already just still have them coming up and are working towards them. We are amazed by the work you've been doing on them. We know how much effort goes into hosting those screenings, and we've seen what an impact they've been having across the UK. We understand from the amazing NEB team that they've had, they estimate around 17,000 people coming to screenings already, which is really just absolutely incredible. Now, the People's Emergency Briefing does a brilliant job of ensuring that audiences understand how dangerous the situation and how urgently we need to take action to protect our communities. And the key question that a lot of people have after seeing the People's Emergency Briefing is, okay, well, what do we need to do next? And the Nature and National Security Bill is very much an answer, in part to that question. This is a brand new piece of legislation that people can mobilize around, but in order for it to succeed, we really need your help urgently. The new session of Parliament started this week, as I'm sure lots of you know. That means there is a new private members bill ballot coming up on the 21st of May. So literally, that is this time next week. We'll have been through that process. So this is really a chance for your MP to champion this new bill, the Nature and National Security Bill, and get it made into law. And to help us, we're asking you on this call and everyone who's watching it on kind of catch up to do three urgent things for us. And the first one is to lobby your MP to support the bill. You visit our website, zerohour.uk, and email your MP using the tool on the website, asking them to get behind this vital new piece of legislation. Every MP has an opportunity to enter the ballot and champion this bill, and your MP really could be the one that makes the difference on this. But they'll only do it if their constituents are reaching out to ask them. So please take the action, share it as widely as you can. Now, if your MP is a minister or has a role in government, we know, and I mean, let's face it, who knows who'll be in the government this time tomorrow, because people are resigning left, right, and centre. They may not be able to enter the ballot themselves if they have a government job or they're a minister, but they can still play a role. So don't worry, if you're sat there thinking, well, my MP won't be able to do this, that's fine. They may not be able to enter the private members bill ballot, but they will definitely be able to play a role. We have bespoke emails on the website for ministers and MPs who are on government payroll. You don't need to worry about that. All you need to do is enter your postcode on the website, and the right text will be assigned to your MP automatically. We can take care of all of that for you. The key thing is to make sure that you email them today, tonight, tomorrow morning. We only have a few days to really make the difference on this. So if you have a screening of the People's Emergency Briefing coming up in your area, do invite your MP to attend it. We've seen lots of MPs have been engaging, and audiences and hosts have been engaging with them really well as a result. It's a great opportunity to ask them, have they heard about this new bill? We have an MP briefing pack. I'm going to be sharing the links to all of these things in the chat. We have a new MP briefing pack specifically on the Nature and National Security Bill, which explains what it is, what it does, why it's so important. You can send that to your MP, get them to give you their thoughts on this piece of new proposed legislation. You can also meet your MP in the constituency. Time is very short to do that, I realise, so it might not be possible. That's why those screenings are so important, a great opportunity to meet them there. And it really does follow on this bill from the People's Emergency Briefing. So, if you've hosted a screening, maybe reach out to the attendees who've been along already, tell them about the new bill, ask them to take the action to email their MP as well. And that's partly the second thing that you can do for us, is to help us spread the word as much as possible about this new bill far and wide. Obviously, we have the private members bill ballot coming up, so this is a great time to, if you're on social media, use your socials to try and raise awareness of it. In the links we're going to share, there will be some social media copy for various platforms, whichever platform you choose to use. If it's one where you can tag your MP in, then please do that, because that also really helps. We've seen from previous CanBill campaign how much power campaigners have when they go on social media and they ask their MP questions. It's somewhere, MPs feel it's such a public platform. MPs quite often feel that they need to respond. So you can ask them about the Nature and National Security Bill there, and see if you get a response from them. If your MP is slow to respond, we will have a list of things that you can do in the constituency. We really think that MPs will find it very hard to push back against a bill that's about national security in the UK. So, but if you do find that your MP is kind of slow to respond, we will have some kind of in-person things that we'll be coming up with in the next couple of weeks to bring out to you. And that'll be a really good way to kind of put the pressure on them. And then thirdly and finally, we all know that we're stronger when we work together. That's why we've set up regional WhatsApp communities. Lots of you on this call will probably already be in one of those communities. You've joined the 0 Hour regional chats, but they're a great place where you can find other people in your area to join forces with and work together, whether that's hosting a People's Emergency Briefing screening, or as we'll be asking you to do, to really put pressure on your MP over the Nature and National Security Bill. So to recap, we've got 7 days before the private members bill ballot. We're asking you to do 3 urgent actions for us. Write to your MP about the nature of national security bill. Use the tool on our website to do that. It'll only take you a couple of minutes, really nice and simple. Let us know if you get a response from them. Let us know what their thoughts on the bill are, whether they'll be picking it up in the private members bill ballot. Share our launch video on your socials and in your local networks, including People's Emergency Briefing attendees, if you've hosted one of those. And link up with other campaigners in our regional WhatsApp groups so that you can really put the pressure on collectively in your constituency. Obviously, the ballot's happening on the 21st of May. Stay tuned to our newsletter and our socials to find out more about what happens with that. But the next 7 days really is the moment to take action. We're in this really surreal moment right now where the government is literally falling apart in front of our eyes. The climate and nature crisis is accelerating, and the UK's national security is at risk. And this really is the moment that we can make a difference. Each and every one of you here on this call and watching on catch up can make the difference by emailing your MP. And we've seen from previous campaigns just what an impact that has. So this is the time to take action. If you have any queries, we're always here. We're really happy to support you. So just reach out to us, campaign@zerohour.uk. And yeah, we'll be really happy to support. That's everything from me. I'll pass back to you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what we're going to do is we've got quite a lot of questions in the chat, which is really great. So we're going to answer quite a few of them. And if we have time, we'll allow people to pop their hand up. But do keep popping your questions in the chat, because even if we can't get to them, we'll be able to be in contact after the event and make sure that we're answering everything, because we understand it's a really important moment, and as much as we can answer, the better. The first one is a good sort of linking question from what a lot of people have joined from, which is our work on the Climate and Nature Bill. So quite a few people are asking sort of, how does this relate and how does it follow on from our work of the Climate and Nature Bill? So I'll pass that potentially on to James, and then Amy, if you want to add in.
Thanks, Alan. It's a really great question. It's one that we've obviously been giving ourselves much thought to in recent months, particularly after the hard work that everyone helped propel us along to the second reading of last year. But the reality is, we are campaigners. We need to make sure that we meet the moment that we're in. And what we've tried to do with this bill is make sure that we do have essentially key provisions within the CAN bill that we can take forwards into implementable ideas. And I think the change in our strategy is now thinking, well, actually, if the government was going to pull a 3-line whip last time, what we need to make sure now is that we can push those provisions through different campaigning methods. So we won't always use a private members bill, in other words. I think what's clever about this is we think it's very palatable and is potentially very realistic to actually get through. But it takes our international commitments for the Global Biodiversity Framework and the 30 by 30 targets. So that's protecting 30% of land and seas by 2030. And making sure that actually here are some actual ideas that the government could put into place almost tomorrow to actually enable us to catch up on that progress that we were talking about that we're lagging behind on earlier in the presentation. So there is definitely a very key aspect from within the CAN bill that's now being transitioned into this. The difference is that was about targets, and this is now about actual ideas. So the two are very much still linked. And as of course, I'm sure a lot of you will know, there were other things in the CAN bill. An end to oil and gas was a crucial thing. I think that's why it's really important just to remind everyone, although we're focused in on the bill today, don't forget that bigger Secure Your Future campaign, which you'll be hearing about a lot this year, because a key objective of that is to help end oil and gas. So do know, I suppose, and please be reassured that we are still using the CAN bill as pretty much our guiding North Star, and we're still going to be campaigning for those provisions within it. They're definitely not being abandoned. Amy, would you add anything to
that? No, that was great, James, and love to know what all of you think. Yeah, exactly that. We a big part of the CAN bill is to meet our international commitments, and this is all about how to actually practically meet this 30 by 30 target within the Global Biodiversity Framework, which would be huge. And the exciting thing about that, because when you talk about national security, it can feel all a bit internal. But actually, if we were to achieve that, it's something that could be adopted and adapted and taken elsewhere, and have real global impact, which we're really excited about. And just as these ideas have been spreading from elsewhere in the Netherlands, we can do the same and push these ideas forwards. Another bit of the CAN bill that was really key, was to think about nature in terms of ecosystems and protecting and restoring ecosystems, which you can very much see on the face of the bill here. And then, as we've all been learning about over the last few years, this interconnection between climate and nature, and how nature is absolutely key, in terms of adaptation. So we're taking the ideas, the targets, the frameworks from the bill and placing them into these really neat policy asks, things that can be delivered, without waiting now, as James was saying. So we're really excited about it. And it's had really good reception, from people that we've been speaking to so far in terms of our cross-party MP supporters. I think the way that we're trying to create a narrative, and we keep saying this phrase that seems a bit jargony, that meeting the moment phrase. But I think that's exactly what we've been able to do. We can say the government have said this ecosystem collapse is, a national security risk. They need an answer to it. We've got a really practical answer to that question, a really important, massive piece of the puzzle, something that would be a good news story and impact positively communities right around the UK. So we think this can really meet the moment and push us forward in a really positive way.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to sort of jump right. We've got quite a few questions, but I'm going to go to one towards Jamie, which I'll maybe start with part of the answer and go on to Jamie, which is, Jan has said, very exciting, got a meeting with the MP on the 22nd. I want to discuss the climate nature crisis. Can we share the slides? The first bit I'm going to say is, I think Jamie's already offered this, but we can definitely be in touch to support with this, because we also have a briefing which it gives a lot of the detail, which will help answer some of those questions, and we'll also have other resources we can share. But is there anything else you want to add, Jamie, about how we can support people that might be speaking to their MPs about this bill and this opportunity? You're on mute, I think. Oh, okay. The next sort of question is sort of going back to what we can learn, which is good. So it's what can we learn from the engagement that we had with MPs over the climate and nature bill, and bring that into engagement to make sure that they're on board with what this new proposal is. So essentially, it's about sort of how do we, both as campaigners and as our team, how we're going to take the momentum of people who backed the CAN bill, and we're going to bring them with us. Some of that you'll have already touched on, but Amy, do you want to start with that?
I can start with that, and then I'm going to unmute Jamie to answer that previous question. Poor Jamie was behind a wall of silence, so I will do that after answering this question. Yeah, we've all of us. I think you as campaigners and contacting your MPs and working constituents. I mean, many of you might have been working this way for decades and decades. For some of you might be turning up and this is fresh. But I think we've learned so much from the course of the Zero Hour campaign so far, which we can take forward, which is amazing. And I think because of all of your efforts and hard work, we've got such a huge network of people, from scientists, politicians, to local organizations, to huge banks and NGOs and other groups. So we really have got this huge wave of support that's pushing us forwards, which is very exciting. So we've got a very incredible platform to leap off right from the get-go. We've also got new structures in place, like our Climate and Nature Crisis Caucus, which provides us a really good platform for engaging with the government, with the civil service, which is something really new for us as well. Um, yeah, James, do you want to come in with the second bit?
Sorry, on the second bit, just remind me what the second bit was.
Well, have you got anything else to add in
Oh,
terms
see,
of
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it is useful to talk about last year because although I know at the time, often, I mean, we felt it as much as you did that actually it's a disappointment and an incredibly sad moment for everyone. But actually, what happened through the rest of the year was as a direct result of the pressure that you yourselves had created. So if you've not seen it yet, we can send around again a link to our impact report that we published of last year. But we had all these campaigning wins. All these concessions would not have happened if we'd not taken the government basically almost to the brink. And those concessions were really big moments, genuinely really, really big moments. And so you've got to really think now about what else has happened. Now, we can't necessarily give away our entire strategy on a call, but which I'm sure you can all understand. But one of the things that we don't actually publicly talk about is that by getting into the position that we did and starting to talking to Ed Miliband and his team, actually we've also now developed new relationships within DEFRA and DESNES. So now we've got those ministerial relationships. We're starting to understand what we would need to do once you get to the negotiation table in order to sort of bring something forward and then have it made law as well. So that's obviously not something we don't go into lots of detail about publicly, but alongside the sort of the insider pressure that hopefully the Climate and Nature Crisis Caucus, that's a mouthful, isn't it, will help in terms of influencing. We've now got that side of things to help us on our way as well. So I think the difference now is that although we had lots of MP support previously, it was very much an outsider campaign. Now we think we've got this special magical thing of either having an insider and outsider campaign in a sort of almost like a pincer movement. So we think that will stand us in good stead. No guarantees, but the thing we absolutely need more than anything, because it's what we were born on and it's in our DNA, is constituency pressure. Absolutely, the government never does things unless they're forced to. So don't let that ever leave your brains, please, because it's only because of you that we're in the position that we are. And it's only because of what happened last year that we're now in this even better position, I would say.
Thanks so much. I'm going to jump on the momentum of that onto a question, which I'm sure Paul and Jamie probably have something to say about, which is essentially on this public pressure, thinking about the momentum of things like the People's Emergency Briefings. How can we link the importance of this bill to what's happening with these screenings and utilise that momentum that's happening in all of these screenings? And I'm going to cheat by saying some of the direct requests of our bill are in the screenings, but maybe start with Jamie on practical things, what people can do, and then Paul can maybe come in and speak about the power of those screenings have had.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for unmuting me as well. I think on a practical level, it really is a case of using that momentum. If you've had a People's Emergency Briefing in your constituency, if you've organised it, you will have, a wonderful list of attendees. I'm sure, we're hearing back from people that this is a brilliant way of them kind of increasing the scope of their local network, really meeting people who they haven't met before. I mean, we had one in my hometown. There, I think about 100 people turned up, and I would say the majority of them were people who I hadn't met before, which was really lovely because normally you go to events like this and it's the same faces. But I think it's really mobilized people, and it's mobilized people from different communities and we're all in bubbles, but in different bubbles, bringing them all together to make one bigger bubble, which is great. So I think if you've had one or if you're having one, this is a really great moment to use the energy from those screenings to really encourage people to take action, because the general sense is, everybody comes out of those screenings fired up and it's like, right, we want to do something. And, there are lots of different things that we can do, but in terms of getting the government to actually change course and bring in new legislation, this Nature and National Security Bill is really this, as Amy said, it meets the moment of where we're at right now. So we have, if you go on our website, we have some really fancy new leaflets that are specifically on the Nature and National Security Bill, which are really good to hand out if you're having screenings. Really good to connect with people in that way. Obviously, we've shared the list of resources that we're sharing tonight in terms of social shares and things like that. So you can send some of those things. You can send the wonderful video that Paul did for us to anyone who's been along to those emergency briefings. and really spread the word about this new bill in that way. And this bill really does feel as though it's grown out of a lot of the science that's in the People's Emergency Briefing, thinking of nature as critical national infrastructure, and also having the scientists from the briefing itself, which is a great point for me to pass over to Paul, because it's wonderful that we have someone on the call who's also in the briefing and was there at Westminster in November. So Paul, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. I think you put that really, really well. That was really, really, really well put, and I think that's why I've been so excited to be part of it. Just so that people on the call know, the National Emergency Briefing is not going away anytime soon either. It's actually picking up, if anything. So the cumulative amount of screenings around the country seems to be going up, which, well, the cumulative one would be, of course, but sorry, the amount of screenings per week is going up. So that's really, really exciting. It may even be going international. There are several other countries that are looking at it. So there's all these feedbacks. I think Jamie put it very well in terms of, this is about community resilience as well. These are no regrets sort of approaches. The National Emergency Briefing, the Nature and National Security Bill, these are things that we absolutely need to do to be resilient in the future. And I think that's what the really key hook is for policymakers is, this is coming. We are experiencing it. El Nino is coming in the next little while. Temperatures will increase. We will continue to have these extreme weather days. How we deal with this is through nature. It's through biodiversity. It's through seeing this as a national security issue, as a safety issue for the country. So I think that that's really, as James said there, is a really, really nice link with the National Emergency Briefing and the sense that, this is a security issue. I don't know. I don't know whether we can say Amy yet, but there are sort of military folks involved in the bill, and so we do have that on board as well. And this is another thing that I think the National Emergency Briefing and also the Nature's National Security Bill can do is broaden this out from, say, environmental campaigners to also national security folks. Folks that have the right things in mind. Understand what the picture is, understand the science. But I think that's really important too because it spreads out the number of people who are talking about it across these different silos in government.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just anecdotally, but an important one, that it has been the power of this intersectionality because I've managed to, for example, I live in Scotland, to get members of the Scottish Parliament who are interested predominantly in health to suddenly engage on an issue of climate and nature, which they otherwise were sort of darting around. So this joining the dots of every single person's MP that's in this call will have a direct connection in to what we're talking about through health, the economy, through security. So I think it's been a really great tool. And yeah. And on sort of mobilizing people, I'm going to follow on with that, which is, so we've got a question, which is, it sounds like writing to MPs is the most useful thing in the next week, but what about after that? So this is about if you are in the private member's bill ballot, if your MP selects it or doesn't, what other things are we doing around mobilizing people around the bill? I'll probably pass that to Jamie, but other people can chip in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Alan. So this time next week, we'll know who the top 20 MPs are who've been picked in the ballot. Obviously, if it's your MP, then you will definitely be hearing from us because we will asking you to be doing lots of work in your constituency to really put that pressure on. But we also, we went through this with the CAN bill. We also know that the pressure can be put on other MPs as well because MPs are all in their Westminster bubble, and the conversations that can be had between them over who's been picked in the private members bill ballot and what piece of legislation it is that they're going to be picking up are really vital. So if your MP isn't one of the ones who's won the lottery, as it were, of being able to put forward new legislation, it doesn't mean that they can't do anything. They can be writing to secretaries of state, they can be writing to other MPs in their party who may have been picked in the ballot, all these wonderful kind of things. all of which we'll be doing when the time comes. For now, we've got a 7-day window really, and we're really laser focused on making sure that everybody has emailed their MP about this bill ahead of the ballot. And when we get to the ballot, we'll have a clearer idea of who the runners and riders are, as it were, and who's been picked and who hasn't, and we can take it from there. But there will be. I want to make it clear there will be lots for everybody to do, because this is really the most concentrated part of kind of our campaigning through the private members mechanism, and it really does require campaigners really to put that pressure on. And we saw this previously with the previous campaign, and we saw, you may feel that sending an email it feels so simple. You're just like, will it actually make a difference? But when like that, we had, in January 2025, 30,000 people emailing their MP over the space of just a couple of weeks. That is the kind of thing that really does kind of pierce the Westminster bubble and really does get MPs talking to each other. So we had stories of, MPs saying, I was in the bathroom and another MP came up to me and said, in Parliament, and said, oh, are you going to be taking this bill forward or not? So that kind of conversation happens when constituents are raising their voices. When constituents raise their voices, MPs pay attention. So yeah, so we will definitely have an update in a week's time. We'll definitely be able to tell you who's been picked, who hasn't, and we'll definitely have lots of actions for everybody, regardless of whether your MP has been picked or not, to take, because this is more than just one. There's more than just 20 MPs. This really is about our national security, and it's something that every of the 650 MPs should be absolutely focused on as we move forward, because we do not have the time for them to continue with the kind of chaos and delay and denial that we've seen in past years. This is the moment. So in order to do that, we all need to be performing our civic duty as citizens and really lobbying them hard.
Yeah, well put. Yes, you want to add something, James?
Yeah, it was just to say, I've thought about this a lot, and hopefully people will go with me on this. But my analogy is always that those 20 MPs have just won the national lottery. They've just become millionaires overnight. Everyone wants to be their best friend. So it's not just about thinking of this from the MP's lens, it's thinking about it from campaigning groups such as ourselves and other charities and NGOs. There are many private members' bills, not just even within the environmental sector, from other causes completely. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen the assisted dying bill, obviously last time around. So it is a competitive process, and essentially it is through volume and also really making sure that those key messages cut through, which is going to make the difference for us. And we know now, because we've done it before, that we can absolutely do this without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, please, just to almost really re-emphasise Jamie's point, don't worry if the target MPs are not in your constituency. Our strength as a campaign has always come from being a collective force together. We're always stronger together. So there will definitely be actions, even if you aren't in the chosen MPs' constituencies. That, if anything, will make just as much difference as if you are in the constituency, in fact. So yeah, please do hold on to your seats, because there's going to be some really exciting things for you all to do if you've got the time and if you've got the inclination in about a week's time.
And what I can also do as a little bit of a promise is we can share some of the actions and photographs of the pressure that we're all part of last year on this process, which led to us successfully getting selected. So maybe it'll give a little bit of inspiration of what's to come. I've got another great question here from Alex, which is about, would it be a good idea to try and see if we can get trade union support? And this is maybe a good opportunity to speak about trade unions we've worked with in the past in our work with that. So maybe, James, you want to jump in on that, and Amy, you can add anything that might be useful.
Oh, cheers, Alan. I was actually, Felix, I wondered if you might want to take this one, and I can always jump in after you if you want.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on this one. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I've been in the background answering questions in the chat, but well done, everyone, for taking everyone through the bill here today, and hopefully everyone's excited as we are. It's a really great question, and we definitely want to bring unions into the conversation around this. And I think a key part of the bill being around a nature job strategy is a great way to do that. we've been really lucky and fortunate to work with so many trade unions in the past, and we had 26 trade union leaders come out in support of the CAN bill in the last session, which was really powerful. I think representing over 1 million workers in the end, which is such an awesome stat. So we're really keen to continue that engagement, and maybe also look towards some of the bigger ones. I know someone put in a chat, Unison, who do a lot of work on green jobs, and yeah, we'd definitely be keen. So anyone has any contacts or any advice, please do reach out and get in contact with us, because we'd be definitely happy to lean on anyone's knowledge. But yeah, over to Amy, maybe you want to say a bit more.
Well, that's brilliant, Felix, and I think it's just and it's great that lots of you in the questions as well have picked up on the concept of jobs, because I think it is a really important part of this bill and a really important part of the framing for trying to push for the government to pick this up as well. We really wanted to create something that we can make the case for how this is useful and tangible and will help in terms of things like boosting the economy and job creation. So that's really fabulous. And we'll be reaching out to unions and really building the case on this point.
And there's another question which is sort of related. I think you've mainly answered it, which is about making real jobs for a range of skills and is really key. And where and what will these jobs be? And this is anecdotal, but I think it's important to sort of speak about, which is for people that don't know, I live in the very north of Scotland, where there's a real problem of sort of losing jobs to big cities. And an example that really helped with this, not only has been the work of the National Park, but has been one of the world's first rewilding centres in Dundragon, which is just near Inverness. And it's not only bringing jobs in for restoring the ancient Caledonian forest, but it's also bringing in educational opportunities. So how do we actually teach people about nature restoration and the role that it's playing? And it's been really, to be honest, it's been really inspiring watching it, because even me that's sort of seeing this and breathing it every day, watching them holding people of all ages, showing them the importance of peatland restoration, teaching about tracking and about the ecosystems of Scotland has been really key. So this has already created a huge amount of jobs, and there is obviously a countless amount that is happening. But is there anything else you want to add on that about where and what will these jobs be? And is there anything you would like to add, Amy?
I think that answered it really well, Alan, in terms of giving a picture. And like I said, during the presentation, what is exciting about this is the range of jobs that will be involved in creating this master plan of this infrastructure as a strategic nature network. So yeah, over to you.
My next question is a little bit about process, but I think it's important to clarify this question, which is it's really great to see someone mentioning the importance of the Clean Water Bill. And their question is, will this divide votes on which one wins the ballot? So this is that question of, if we have multiple different important nature legislation, will this divide the chance of them taking it up or not? And I'll throw it out into the ether, and you can decide who's best to answer it. But I will say we support the Clean Water Bill. But yes, I'll pass on. Amy's unmuted, which is a sign.
I'm unmuting to offer Felix to begin to answer that one, and then I'll add on.
I think, as James touched on earlier, it is a competitive system. It's quite rare that you give 20 politicians out of 650 the chance to introduce anything they want. Obviously, there's so many things that we all probably believe need to change or could be better or should improve. So MPs have to go through what works for them locally in terms of their campaigns. And I think, we are very supportive of the Clean Water campaign, as we are with many different campaigns. And it's all about right place, right moment, right time. And I think all of these different bills and proposals complement each other. So if one's chosen the other, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And we'll be there to support them, just as if we get chosen and they don't, they'll be there to support us. So in a polite way, yes, we're all in competition, but very friendly competition.
And And a very important anecdote to give in this was also the case last time when we were speaking about the climate and nature bill. There was also wonderful legislation like the Sunshine Bill about rooftop solar, and we both got picked up. People recognised that we're all pressuring these MPs, and as Felix touched on, this is all part of a web of solutions. So the more we can collaborate on these things, the better. So there's space for many of us, and the importance of that top 20 in particular of this ballot. We will be going to all of them with the chance of trying to push this. But James, do you want to come in?
Well, yeah, it's just I think this is an important nuance, and dare I say it, an advantage to us this time, which is that this national security framing has been chosen very carefully for strategic reasons, and it will have much wider appeal given the context we find ourselves in. You could argue if you went out on a purely environmental sort of branch, you might only potentially attract the interests of certain MPs because of their own personal or party interests. This now we are basically joining the dots and saying, well, this is how nature happens to be important to all aspects of life, and actually the context we find ourselves in means that I think it would be more palatable, even if the MP themselves perhaps isn't an innate environmentalist, should we say. They might understand, though, that national security for the UK is really important for the government, and therefore that this is a way to actually achieve that. So maybe bear that in mind. But yeah.
And we are running short on time. We have captured lots of your questions. So if we haven't got to it, the good thing is you registered for the event. So we have a way of getting back in touch and making sure we answer as much as possible. We will be in time sort of adding frequently asked questions, which hopefully will be able to also answer questions that maybe we haven't got to. But I would just like to thank, importantly, everyone that joined this call and has supported us along the journey. This is a really key opportunity, as we've said, not only for passing legislation, but also about this moment of solidarity, of being part of a solution. And there is momentum as we started this call with the People's Emergency Briefing, and there is more people. I loved what Paul shared about this misconception of public opinion, and this is really great in the People's Emergency Briefing film, which is we can feel like we're 100 people on this call, but there's 75,000 people who support our work. There's all the scientists that back it. There's all the organizations. And the majority of public actually support more action on climate and nature. The thing that we need to do now is to make sure that our MPs hear and see that, whether that's calling or messaging your MP. So we will make sure to share these resources of how do you write to your MP. And over the next coming week, we'll have lots of actions that you can get involved in. And we will be sharing opportunities to connect to other campaigners, because something we haven't touched on a lot, but is important, is we have groups all over the UK where people meet in person and have community meetings with their MP. So there's lots of mechanisms. You're not alone in just writing your email. There's lots of ways to work with other campaigners. So thank you all for being part of that. It's a huge help. And thanks also for Paul Behrens for joining us and sharing his expertise, and obviously to my colleagues as well for sharing all of their expertise too. If we haven't got to your question and we don't respond, well, you can remember that you can email us at hello@zerohour.uk. We'll also share that in the follow-up email. So there's lots of ways you can stay in touch. But thanks again for staying on for so long in this call. And I really hope to be part of changing something really important with you in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Have a good evening.